Cole, you've heard what Frank said there, and you know the history of the two fights that didn't happen, and the aggravation in the corridor and the aggravation in the changing room. But does that excuse in any way what went on in the ring with the spitting?
You cannot defend the indefensible. Now, where I come from, in the East End of London, if somebody spits in your face like that, I admire Vladimir's self-control. I expected when I saw that happen that Vladimir was going to belt him one. Because I say, where I come from, that was what would have happened. I mean, in this country, we used to complain bitterly when Latino footballers spat in the faces of our players. It's abhorrent to anybody, but to the British, it's worse than being kicked or slapped or punched. To me, it is a despicable act. And, you know, you can't condone it, you can't... I know he was wound up, but I've seen other people get wound up before fights, but he wouldn't dream of doing that.
But what was Vladimir doing there in his face?
Hang on a minute. Well, I agree with Connie. It is indefensible.
Sure.
It shocked me. I never expected it. It's wrong. No one's trying to, in any shape or form, say that. What I'm saying is what was happening behind the scenes. And again, you just made the point. So what is Vladimir doing in his face again? Why is he there? He's not fighting Vladimir. What's he doing there?
Well, he's taking something back from the slap on behalf of his brother, probably, because they are close. There might as well be twins.
That may be the case. They can be twins. They can all be doing this. But at the end of the day, that was what was going on. And Colin, for some, it's like you typing out, you doing your job, typing your report out, and somebody comes in and tears it up, and you've got to file it in immediately. It's torn up into shreds. You start again. It's wrong. What they did was wrong, and what Derek's response to it was outrageous and terribly wrong. But let's not make out they're angels, because they're not. And remember, he's gone through quite a thing with Vladimir. There's a lot of pent-up anger there with Derek. Derek's not the most subtle guy, as you obviously see.
He does what he does.
He's done some silly things, you know, stupid things that I know now he regrets. He regrets doing them. There's no doubt about it. Everybody in boxing regrets that it happened. It is indefensible. I'm not trying to defend it. What I'm saying is, what may have helped the situation in the dressing room had the board representative stayed there and took some responsibility rather than disappearing.
But that's another story.
Well, it's not another story, because what it all is, it's all part of what happened. And that's, you know, you're asking why these things happen. I'm telling you what's going on in the background, which nobody knows about.
Nothing can be taken in isolation. There's a lead up to every single...
It's a circumstance. So, yeah, he's done two really stupid, ridiculous
things
and unforgivable things. However, what I would say is that, you know, you don't let guys get head-to-head, and you do... And what is the brother doing? Because that's their way of doing it. Every fight, if it's not... whatever brother's fighting, the other brother's in the other dressing room, trying to intimidate him. Really, that shouldn't be happening.
Now, Frank, let me ask you this, and I heard this on the night, and I need you to tell me if it's true or not. Is it true that either you or Derek or whoever it was tried to bring over some security to make sure that Derek's passage through the weigh-in to the fight itself and afterwards? And is it true that is it true that was refused by K2?
Well, first of all, we were only allowed a certain amount of tickets. You've got to remember, you know, listen, I've negotiated my whole life people's contracts, but when you are not in a mandatory position, when you are taking a voluntary defence, if you want the fight, you virtually got to take what it is, and that's what we chose to do. Derek felt that he had to do. We didn't bring any security with us. You know, there was.
Were you told you couldn't, or you didn't take any?
We couldn't take them. They wouldn't have got access to the arena. It's as simple as that.
Was he intimidated on the walk to the ring?
Who?
Was Derek intimidated by the crowd on the walk to the ring?
It wasn't about that. It's not about where the intimidation took place was in the dressing room. In the dressing room. That's where it's taking place. Guys sitting down, you know, getting his hand wrapped, and he's told, for no reason, because there was nothing wrong, they got to come off. It's wrong.
Now, clear up another thing. Sorry, Colin.
Maybe, you know, it's very well for us sitting here. For a fighter, speak to any boxer. When Colin McMillan asked him what he'd like, if his hands were wrapped, and there's nothing wrong with it, you've got to rip it all off.
It happened to Tyson.
It happens to, you know, in all fairness, that's a lot of the things that happen. There's certain trainers in America that make every single fighter take their advantage of. It's just the way it works. Frank, let me ask you this. Is there a designated time for that inspection? Because I was talking to David Haye, and he said he was told when he fought Vladimir that they were going to come in and see him, let's say 8 o'clock. He knew they weren't going to come in, right, because he'd already spoken to people that thought him. So he didn't do his hands until they came in, 20 minutes late.
What we said, we'd tell them when we're wrapping hands, And what it was the hands were going to be wrapped roughly. It was about an hour and a half just before the fight. So it's it's a process that takes time before he warms up, and that's what happened. And in the meantime, we've got, whilst that's all going on, we've got the referee in there, the judges in there. There's no one from anywhere in the other in Vitali's dressing room.
Which is the point you made in an interview with Steve
So what
Lillis.
I said to them, why are you all in here? Why isn't somebody in the other dressing room? Because that's what it was. That's what.
And when it was over, Steve Lillis managed to catch up with Vladimir, and it was very much a case of, yes, I've done my business. It's okay now. I've achieved what I want. I think we can see that. Have we got Steve talking to Vladimir?
Hi, Vladimir. Could you just tell the British TV viewers what the problem was?
You must go to the locker room.
Just for a second, could you please?
Excuse me. 1 second. One answer.
One answer. What the problem was, and is it all solved now?
No, there is certain rules on gauzing and taping the hands, and you have to follow the rules. That's it.
And you're fully
satisfied? So we were following the rules. I've been in this sport for 16 years professionally, and I know exactly what I'm talking about.
You're fully satisfied now?
Yes. So far, so good.
Sorry, it wasn't up to him to be satisfied.
Of course not.
It's up to the WBC supervisor to be satisfied. That's the only person who can. And he was satisfied. He was very helpful, and he absolutely said, no, this was what we agreed at the rules meeting.
Because there's an interesting thing here, Cole. I know you're itching to say something. There's an interesting thing here with the Klitschkos, and you speak to people that have fought them, either American fighters or their cornermen, and they all tell you the same thing. Everything's lovely until you get to the weigh-in and the fight night, and then they try every single trick.
Well, can I make this point I've been trying to make?
Go on, Cole.
And Frank knows this better than me, that when you fight a champion in his own backyard, you sit down with your fighter shorty and say, now look, we're going to XYZ. You're thousands of miles from home. You're going to have every dirty trick thrown at you. That's what comes from fighting away from home. They're going to put you in a lousy room in a hotel, the noisiest part of the hotel. You'll hear traffic going past your room till the early hours of the morning. All the tricks of the trade. And you explain that to your fighter that you're not going to get a single favour.
But the mad thing is with the Klitschkos, they don't do that. They just turn it on the night by blocking and being obstructionable. Frank, quickly before we move.
Yeah, of course we know what's going on. I mean, I've been taking fighters away from home for more years than I care to remember, and of course we go through all this and we talk to them. But I'm not condoning the spitting. I'm not condoning the headbutting. What I'm saying is there was nobody. There was no security there, and there's certainly, as far as that was concerned in the dressing room, I've suddenly got a fighter who's going out of his head, being really, and all he can see is Vladimir Klitschko
right
there,
in his face,
in
smiling.
his face, in the dressing room, laughing at him, and that's where it got to. So he spat at him, outrageous, wrong, but again he was in his face. Derek's not going to be slapping anybody, before the fight takes place. It's just impossible to happen. That was never going to happen, and that's not what it was all about. It's the same thing. But they do it, and they get away with it, and they normally get away with it, and that's what happens. But I must emphasise, I am not condoning what he's did. What I'm saying is that is probably where his state of mind was. Rightly or wrongly, that's where he was.
At that point.
And I was angry about what was going on as well.
Right, listen, before we move on to the next bit, and we do want to get on to this bit, and this is the meat of it, the crunch of it, we're going to have another look at what happened about an hour and a half, in all fairness, after the final bell. This is the bit of the press conference again. David Haye shouting his head off, and I might talk you through what goes down.
Where is he now? Where is he now? You said you want to fight me. I agreed to money.
Take him away, I say.
I agreed to everything. Why are you not fighting me now?
Excuse me.
You have to box up first against the person over there who showed hard. You showed the toe. David, how's your toe? How's your toe? How's your toe? How's your toe? How's your toe?
3 times in a row.
David, you want to tell me that in my face? You want to tell me my face?
You lost the
You
Tyson.
want to tell me my face?
Tyson threw you
All right, tell
off.
me my face.
David, run, David.
Let go. Excuse me. Stand behind me. You tell me my face. Huh? You want to fight me?
You lost me, Joe. You lost me.
No.
What's the British challenge? Put down, David. No. Everybody stop. You glassed me. He glassed me. Please. He glassed me. You're right, but
That's what happened after. I'm going to start with you, Frank, from your position up on the podium. Derek, to your left, it's been growing. There'd been a press conference before. Then he comes in, he starts shouting and screaming, and then Derek decides to get up and go. Holding the microphone, what's going through your head?
Well, I think we'll back up a bit, but actually what did happen. What happened was that David came in, he was calling out Chisora Klitschko and Bernd Bond, who's their manager.
But he'd been there for a while, hadn't he? He didn't come in screaming. The comments have been going on.
I didn't see him coming
Yeah.
up. All I noticed him is when when he was saying about he was asking Klitschko to fight him. And Bernd Bond, who's their business manager, said words to the effect, "No, that's not going to happen. You had your chance. It's a finished business."
Yeah.
And then he suggested that he fights Derek. So I remember, I think I recall, I said, well, that sounds a good idea. Could we make Derek against David Haye, and the winner fights Vitaly?
Yeah.
And he said, he either said yes or he nodded. Well, I think he said yes, Bernd Bond. And then they started their stuff between all this. Most of this stuff is like childish stuff. And I think, as you, Derek's saying about how's your toe, he said to him, you're a loser and you lost your last 3 fights and whatever. And Don Charles, his trainer, said, will the security please remove
Get
that
the security.
man?
Get the
Can
security.
we remove that man?
Okay, which is so you hold you there, Colin. Should David Haye have been there at a fight where he wasn't directly involved, other than working with us? Should he have been? Should he have been allowed at the press conference, knowing the volatile nature of 1 or 2 of the people involved?
Well, if you've got security there, why not? He was part of the media. He presumably had a media accreditation.
He did, yeah.
Once you have that and you're commenting on the fight, he was every right to be there, in my opinion. Okay. Right now, can I?
Go on.
There's nothing new in this world. It's all happened
Yes,
before.
of course.
30 odd years ago, I attended the Spinks press conference, Leon Spinks, after you beat Muhammad Ali. Yeah. Into the room came a young man called Larry Holmes, a contender, screaming and shouting at Leon about time I got a chance.
Fight me.
Oh, the whole bit.
Yeah.
What shouldn't have happened, and what nothing would have happened if Derek Chisora hadn't got out of his chair and walked through to confront David Haye. David Haye, then, I understand, threw the first blow. But if Chisora sits in his chair and doesn't move, none of this happens.